On the day we were supposed to get our marriage certificate, my boyfriend, citing his busy work, didn't show up again. When I got home, I unexpectedly received the marriage certificate between him and his assistant, and the date was exactly today. I smiled and placed that marriage certificate on the desk, then decided to break up with him. Right after that, my boyfriend's call came in. His voice was full of impatience. "Emma, what are you up to? How old are you and still pulling such stunts?" I was about to speak when I heard his assistant's sobbing voice coming from the other end of the phone. "Ethan, did Sister Emma misunderstand us? You'd better go home quickly. I can handle this on my own. Don't mind her. She's always like this. She's so annoying. Right now, you're the most important." My boyfriend's voice of consoling her clearly reached my ears. After the call was hung up, I completely gave up. While I was packing my luggage to move out, my boyfriend Ethan walked in with his new assistant Vivian. "Emma, go and cook some sweet soup. Vivian fainted just now due to hypoglycemia." Ethan's eyes were always fixed on Vivian, his face full of worry. He didn't even look up but loudly ordered me. I looked up briefly, not greeting him at the door as I used to, but continued packing my things. Seeing that I didn't respond, Ethan frowned and finally looked up. "Emma, can't you understand me?" When he saw that I was packing my luggage, he was stunned for a moment. Then his face turned gloomy, and he walked over quickly. "Emma, what do you mean? Are you really planning to pack up and break up with me?" I didn't stop what I was doing and said indifferently, "Can a breakup be fake?" "You." Ethan was choked by my indifferent attitude, and a cold look appeared in his eyes. "What about me?" I sneered, quickly glanced at Vivian, and said sarcastically, "Haven't you already brought your new wife home? I have to hurry up and make room for her." "Emma, what do you mean? I don't understand." Ethan became obviously nervous, and his eyes started to flicker. I gave a cold laugh and threw the marriage certificate at his face. "Ethan, are you a coward who dares to do but not admit it?" When he saw those two marriage certificates, he panicked completely and roared angrily, "Emma, what are you playing at? How come the marriage certificates are with you?" I looked at him with a sarcastic smile and didn't say anything. In this stalemate atmosphere, Vivian spoke with a sobbing voice. "Ethan, I sent it to the wrong place. Because I got married to you and made you quarrel with Sister Emma, it's all my fault." The more she spoke, the sadder she became, and she started to sob. "Vivian, it's not your fault." Ethan immediately changed his expression. He walked towards Vivian with eyes full of pity and carefully escorted her into the room. "Since you already know, I won't hide it anymore. Vivian was recently diagnosed with advanced gastric cancer. She doesn't have much time left. Her last wish is to marry me. You know, Vivian has been by my side since she graduated, sharing my concerns. She's not only my assistant but also my friend. When a friend is in trouble, I can't stand by and do nothing. After Vivian passes away, we can reconsider our marriage. Emma, you surely can understand me, right?" Ethan looked at me with expectant eyes. I averted my gaze and said contemptuously, "She's your assistant, your friend, and your wife. You can discuss things with her. There's no need to discuss with me." Seeing my firm attitude, he frowned again. "Emma, do you really have to be like this? Why are you so heartless? I've said I'll marry you. What's the difference between early and late? Vivian is a patient. Why are you so cold to her?" Vivian also lowered her head at the right time, and tears kept falling. I stopped what I was doing and looked up at the two of them standing together. They were really a perfect match, singing and echoing each other. I suddenly laughed. It was a lie to say that I didn't feel pain in my heart seeing my former lover being so caring towards another woman. But the relationship between him and me had become dirty, and I didn't want to entangle with him anymore. "Yes, I'm cold-hearted. I'll leave immediately and won't disturb you too." I nodded and answered, then quickly pulled my suitcase and left. When I passed by Ethan, he suddenly grabbed me, and his words were extremely merciless. "Emma, don't go too far. Apologize to Vivian right now. I'll pretend this never happened. Otherwise..." I interrupted him and said sarcastically, "Otherwise what? Never come back and beg you? Her? Want me to apologize? Does she deserve it?" Ethan's face completely darkened, and the warning in his voice was self-evident. "Emma, that's enough. I'll give you one last chance. Apologize to Vivian. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." In the stalemate, Vivian grabbed Ethan's wrist, pretending to be understanding. "Ethan, don't be angry with Sister Emma. Sister Emma is not wrong. It's all my fault. I should be the one to leave. Seeing this, Ethan immediately let go of me to comfort her. Taking this opportunity, I pulled my suitcase and left without hesitation. Before going out, Ethan's cold voice came clearly again. Emma, if you walk out this door today, don't even think about coming back. Let's see what kind of happy life a useless person like you can have without me. I stopped, turned around, and looked at them. It wasn't because of nostalgia, nor did I want to turn back. I just wanted to take one last look at the person I once loved deeply. His face now was so disgusting. After looking, I turned around and left without hesitation. Ethan was once the one I couldn't get, but also my whole choice. He had always been the young master of the Ethan family, high and mighty, while I was just a trivial little character. We met in college, but we didn't have much interaction at that time. I would follow in his footsteps every day, going to class, finishing class, having meals, and taking walks. Finally, in order to see him more, I studied hard and transferred to the college where he was. Until today, I had always been glad that I made the decision to change my major back then. It was that decision that led to the development of my relationship with Ethan. At that time, the professor told us that if we wanted to pass the final exam without failing, we had to form groups and go to the laboratory to collect data by ourselves. I had always been an excellent student in the class, and Ethan refused everyone who showed affection to him and took the initiative to ask to form a group with me. I still remember how excited I was at that time. Looking at his handsome face, my heart was pounding, and my cheeks were so hot that they seemed to be able to cook an egg. Ethan propped his chin up, with a smile in his eyes, and joked, "Student Emma, if you keep looking at me like this, the bell for the end of class will ring." The whole class burst into laughter, and I suddenly came to my senses, feeling extremely embarrassed. But Ethan didn't laugh at me. Instead, he came to my rescue and said, "Stop laughing. It's my honor to be in a team with classmate Emma." Just like that, our relationship grew closer and closer. Eventually, Ethan actually took the initiative to confess his love to me. We spent 3.5 wonderful years in college together. We were the ideal couple in the eyes of everyone. Even during our relationship, I didn't neglect my studies. I always received full scholarships and got an offer from an international big company after graduation. However, as the only son in the family, Ethan had the responsibility to go back and inherit the family business. Facing his sad eyes that he didn't want to be separated from me, I didn't hesitate to give up the job opportunity that many people dreamed of and joined the Ethan group with him, offering suggestions to help him stabilize his position in the company. To avoid being said that I got promoted through connections, I chose to start from the grassroots level. Our relationship became stronger and stronger, and I thought it was time to discuss marriage. But every time I brought up this topic, he always avoided talking about it. When I asked him the reason for his avoidance, he was always evasive. Later I learned that Vivian had already existed in his life at that time. Vivian was younger than me, more charming, and knew better how to please him. Gradually, the conversations between Ethan and me changed from various topics to the trivial matters between him and Vivian. I wasn't unaware of his changes and had tried many times to save this relationship, but his heart no longer belonged to me. No matter what reasons I used to try to keep him, as soon as Vivian called, he would rush to her without hesitation. All his care and patience for me were transferred to Vivian. Towards me, he only had indifference and dissatisfaction left. Despite this, I still didn't want to let go and brought up the idea of getting married again. This time, he agreed. However, on the day we agreed to get the marriage certificate, he left me behind again for Vivian. When I saw their marriage certificate, I realized that this time, I really needed to wake up. Back at the shabby small house left by my parents, leaning against the wall where my parents' portraits were hanging, I finally couldn't help crying out loud. After venting my emotions, I simply cleaned up, went out to buy some daily necessities, and then settled down here. Lying on the bed from my childhood, my wandering heart suddenly calmed down. I had a long-awaited good sleep, no longer having to worry about Ethan's mood or whether he had enough to eat and was warm enough. In my dream, I saw my parents who had passed away for a long time. Before I could talk to them properly, the dream turned painful again. In the dream, Ethan blamed me for being so mean to Vivian. He pulled my sleeve and asked me to go and apologize to Vivian. Anger flared up in my heart instantly. Just as I was about to refute, I was woken up by a rapid phone ringing. I groggily answered the phone and then heard Ethan's angry questioning voice. "Emma, where have you run off to? Have you forgotten that today is the company's signing reception? Everyone else is in pairs and my female companion is nowhere to be seen. Are you deliberately trying to make me look bad? I became fully awake and impatiently held the phone away a little. If you think so, then so be it. Emma. Ethan suddenly raised his voice, and then the sound of his footsteps came from the phone. Maybe to find a quiet place to talk, he changed his position. He sighed, and then his tone became a bit gentler. Emma, today is an important day for the company. Don't be angry, okay? Come quickly. The signing ceremony is about to start. After the reception tonight, I'll explain it to you properly, okay? He spoke to me in an almost pleading tone, and my hand holding the phone relaxed a little. Before I could respond, I heard a burst of laughter and teasing sounds from his side. Hey, Assistant Vivian looks like a bride today. Yeah, look closely. Assistant Vivian's outfit today really matches our little Ethan's father. Vivian replied with a hint of shyness, don't talk nonsense. I just dressed casually. Seeing that I didn't respond for a long time, Ethan called me again. I sneered, Ethan, don't you already have a female companion? Don't call me anymore. Without waiting for his answer, I quickly hung up the phone. Because I knew that if I didn't hang up, my sad emotions would get out of control. I didn't want to immerse myself in past memories, but the bits and pieces of the past 5 years had deeply integrated into my daily life. So many days and nights I had spent in love with him. I had never thought about how I would continue to live without him. Once, he always put me first and promised me that we would be together forever. But now, he no longer needed me. Tears slipped from the corners of my eyes and wet the pillow. I woke up from the past memories. There was an unbearable pain in my heart. But before I could calm down my emotions, I heard the door being knocked violently. Instinctively, I thought he had come, and my body reacted faster than my brain. When I opened the door barefoot, I realized how ridiculous my behavior was just now. Emma, it's really you. You're back. Olivia from the neighborhood committee was very happy to see me and patted my shoulder warmly. Yes, Olivia, I'm back. What you want from me? Oh, right. I almost forgot the main thing. Olivia said seriously. Emma, go downstairs and take a look. There are several black cars blocking the intersection now. They said they're looking for you. The roads in our community are already narrow and now the neighbors can't get in or out normally. I frowned and followed Olivia downstairs. I saw Ethan's black car parked at the intersection at a glance. As soon as I showed up, the bodyguard immediately opened the car door, and Ethan strode out. I turned around and wanted to leave, but Ethan coldly ordered behind me, Emma, stop right there. I didn't stop. Instead, I quickened my pace, but then his personal bodyguard blocked my way. Emma, what do you mean? Ethan caught up and slapped me without hesitation, you've gone too far. I turned my face to look at him, and the love in my eyes had completely disappeared. He was stunned for a moment, and then said coldly, do you know that I gave up all the guests in the room just to come and pick you up? Now come with me. I didn't want to pay attention to him, but the neighbors around had already started pointing and discussing. Although I didn't want to be with Ethan, I didn't want to be the focus of others' discussion even more. After weighing the pros and cons, I walked towards Ethan's car in my pajamas. The rear seat window rolled down. Vivian, dressed in a gown, apologized to me, Sister Emma, I'm really sorry. I'm not feeling well, so Ethan asked me to sit in the back seat with him. I'm sorry to make you sit in the front passenger seat. Ethan followed suit. Seeing my eyes fixed on Vivian in the back seat, he looked a bit embarrassed. He opened the rear seat door for me and tried to excuse Vivian, saying, Vivian isn't feeling well, so I brought her out for some fresh air. You don't mind, do you, Emma? The back seat is quite spacious. The three of us can sit together. I quickly averted my gaze and took the initiative to sit in the front passenger seat. I don't mind. Ethan was quite displeased with my attitude. He opened his mouth but finally said nothing. He slammed the rear seat door shut and coldly ordered, drive. As the car started, the neighbors were still curiously following the car as it moved. Ethan's face turned even darker because of this, and there was obvious dissatisfaction in his tone. I never thought such a shabby place could be inhabited. Wearing an expensive suit and coming to this kind of place, what bad luck. Hearing his words, I gave him a cold look through the rearview mirror and replied sarcastically, since you're so noble, Ethan, you really shouldn't have come here today. You. Seeing this situation, Vivian said pitifully, Ethan, did I make Sister Emma unhappy by coming along? Otherwise, I'd better switch seats with Sister Emma. Ethan stared at me in the rearview mirror and said viciously, you just sit here. Let's see what she can do to you. I pretended not to hear, withdrew my gaze, and closed my eyes to rest. I was conserving my energy for the tough battle ahead. Ethan, since you're not willing to let me go easily, don't blame me for using any means necessary. The car stopped in front of a hotel under the Ethan group. Ethan still seemed angry. As soon as the car stopped steadily, he got out in a hurry and left alone. His bodyguard followed closely behind me, so he wasn't worried that I would take the opportunity to run away. I got out of the car calmly, but Vivian came up with a sarcastic smile. She no longer pretended to be weak as usual but aggressively blocked my way. Don't be too complacent, Emma. Ethan is my husband now. You're just a shady mistress. Just wait and see. The one who will stand beside him in the end must be me. Then I'll wish you in advance, Assistant Vivian. You'll finally turn from a sparrow into a phoenix. I clapped my hands while smiling and passed by her with a face full of sarcasm, walking inside. Actually, I knew that Ethan insisted on me attending the signing ceremony today not because he cared about me that much. It was because the leading company in the industry that was signing with the Ethan Group today was negotiated by me personally. The leadership of that company only recognized my ability and specifically pointed out that the business dealings with the Ethan Group must be handled by me. Otherwise, there would be no deal. If I didn't show up today and that company found its words ignored, the project worth billions would surely fall through. That's why Ethan condescended to pick me up from the slum. Just as I reached the entrance of the banquet hall, Ethan came over from the side. He frowned and looked me up and down in my cheap pajamas, with obvious contempt on his face. Are you going to attend like this? It's already embarrassing enough. After the sarcasm, he pulled me into the backstage dressing room. He picked out a gown that matched his suit and threw it to me. Then he arrogantly ordered the makeup artist and stylist, do her makeup and hair. Hurry up. I was like a puppet being manipulated. Looking at myself in the mirror, I could barely recognize myself. Well, this looks decent finally. Ethan stood behind me, crossing his arms, and commented sharply. Hearing his tone, I couldn't help rolling my eyes. Actually, I didn't care about these superficial decorations. After all, I was going to leave his world after tonight. Since this was the last night, I didn't care what others thought of me. After getting dressed up, Ethan forcefully took my arm and walked into the banquet hall. As soon as we entered, the lights immediately focused on us. The surrounding conversations and the sounds of clinking glasses also stopped abruptly. I felt a bit dazed. It always felt more like the wedding scene of Ethan and me. Sure enough, the host's voice soon confirmed my premonition. He cleared his throat and read out words blessing eternal love in a loud voice. Then he announced that the signing ceremony would be held after the engagement ceremony of young Master Ethan's father. As the host's voice fell, I came back to my senses from the shock. I tried desperately to break free from Ethan, but he tightly grabbed my arm. Emma, you'd better cooperate with me today. His tone was full of an unassailable order. I sneered and forcefully broke free from him. In front of everyone's surprised eyes, I calmly announced, today's engagement ceremony is a show self-directed and self-acted by Mr. Ethan. I knew nothing about it and absolutely will not accept it. I have drawn a clear line with Mr. Ethan. He and Miss Vivian, his assistant, have officially become husband and wife. I never interfere in other people's marriages. Therefore, I hereby officially declare that as of today, I will no longer be a member of the Ethan Group, nor will I participate in any business of the Ethan Group. Finally, I said to Ethan with a smile, I've already resigned, and the liquidated damages have been transferred to your account. From now on, we'll never see each other again. Ethan stood there completely stunned. His hands were tightly clenched, and he stared blankly at me. Then, I turned around and left. The signing party realized that I wasn't joking. They angrily smashed the wine glass, left a sentence, "This is ridiculous," and led the team to leave the banquet. All the small entrepreneurs who were invited to attend were waiting for the follow-up development and no one left. At the moment when I was about to push the door and leave, Ethan finally came to his senses. He shouted orders while running towards me, Emma, stop right there. I was stopped by the bodyguard again, so I had to stop and turn around to look at him. Ethan tugged at me and said plaintively, Emma, how could you do this to me? Didn't we have an agreement? Just then, Vivian walked over. She looked at us who were pulling at each other and said carefully, Ethan, I'm not feeling well. Can you stay with me? Ethan didn't even give her a glance. He looked at me full of expectation, Emma, stop making trouble. Don't be angry with me anymore, okay? The scene fell into silence for a while, and everyone was frantically recording with their mobile phones. I kindly reminded him, but Ethan seemed not to hear and kept tugging at me, not letting go. I suddenly got angry and sneered, Ethan, you may not care about your dignity, but I do. You were the one who dumped me and got married to someone else. I let go and tried to be magnanimous, but it's also you who's pulling me and refuses to let go. What on earth do you want? No, Emma. I've always loved you. I'll divorce Vivian right away, and we'll go get our marriage certificate immediately. At this point, Ethan already knew that I wasn't just throwing a tantrum. His eyes were reddened with anxiety as he looked at me hopefully. I stared back at him expressionlessly, my impatience almost palpable. There was a time when if he shed even a single tear, I would blame myself for days. But now, looking at the tears welling up in his eyes, I only felt extreme disgust. I said coldly, Ethan, you're really heartless. Your newly married wife is eagerly looking forward to you turning around and giving her a glance, yet you're pestering me right in front of her. As a woman, how humiliated she must feel at this moment. As I spoke, I provocatively glanced at Vivian. Upon hearing this, Ethan frowned tightly and motioned for the bodyguard to take Vivian away. No matter how much Vivian shouted, he was stingy enough not to spare her a single glance. He just kept assuring me, Emma, my future wife will only be you. I was wrong this time, and I'll never do it again. To be honest, if I had heard these words before, I would have given my life for him. But now, I shook him off in disgust. The Ethan Group has a huge business. You don't want it to be ruined on your watch, do you? If you don't care that the stock price of the Ethan Group will plummet, I don't mind arguing with you here. After I said that, Ethan finally let go of his hand, trembling. I then pushed open the door and left quickly. I didn't expect Ethan to chase after me. The shoes on his feet fell off, leaving a trail of bloody footprints where he passed. I calmly withdrew my gaze and quietly waited for the online booked car to arrive. When he saw me, he reached out his hand, trying to pull me into his arms. But seeing my cold eyes, he stopped in his tracks, looking wronged. Emma, I've thought it over. Nothing is more important than you. My dad is in charge of the Ethan Group, and he'll take care of everything for me. He said it very sincerely. I also understood what he meant implicitly. Seeing that I didn't mock him again, he carefully walked over and took my hand. Looking up at me with eyes full of tears, he pouted and said, Emma, my feet hurt so much. I didn't answer and my gaze passed over him to look behind him. If your feet hurt, you should go complain to your legitimate wife, not keep pestering your ex-girlfriend like me. Hearing my words, Ethan became a bit emotional. But then he quickly calmed down. He got bolder and put his arm around my waist. Emma, stop being sarcastic. I know I was wrong about this. I really know I was wrong. I even chased you out. Can't you feel my love for you? I looked at him quietly for a moment with downcast eyes. His love for me? No, he, the young master of the Ethan family, has always been the one being fawned over and coaxed. It was my constant rejection that stimulated his desire to conquer. But once he got what he wanted, I would immediately become something he found uninteresting. Your wife is watching you. Aren't you going to comfort her? It's not very nice to make your legitimate wife show such a heartbreaking expression, is it? Ethan suddenly turned his head. Vivian then stepped forward and hugged him. Ethan, don't go with her. Let's go home, okay? Ethan, don't do anything that makes me look down on you. Since you've made a choice, there's no turning back. I continued to add fuel to the fire. Ethan, I don't want to see you ever again from now on. Maybe my repeated refusals had hurt his pride. He pushed Vivian away and instead put his arm around her shoulder, glaring at me with a gloomy face. Emma, you really don't know what's good for you. You didn't cherish it when I was coaxing you nicely. You just had to make me angry. Fine, never see each other again, right? Let's see which other company dares to hire you after the Ethan Group publicly dumps you. I retorted, we'll see about that. The farce at the banquet of the Ethan Group topped the hot search headlines that night. I don't know who leaked my phone number. That night, my phone was directly crashed by reporters who wanted to dig up gossip. I blocked one batch, and the next batch called right away. Helpless, I had to go to the business hall early the next morning to cancel the couple's phone number I had with Ethan. The world finally returned to peace. Just when I planned to live a quiet life, Ethan played the same trick again. He led 3 cars and blocked the entrance of the community where I lived tightly, threatening that if I didn't go with him, he would live in the car and not leave. Now, I'm not afraid of being watched by the neighbors. I'm just afraid that his big commotion will attract reporters to stake out. By then, my peaceful days would be completely over. Filled with anger, I got into his car. When he saw me, a glimmer of light flashed in Ethan's eyes, but it quickly returned to calm. I caught it and observed him quietly. "Mr. Ethan, have you forgotten what you said that day? What brings you to me today?" My attitude was distant and cold. He lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, "Emma, my dad is in the hospital and wants to see you." He had lost the arrogance he had that night, so I remained silent and didn't say anything. We arrived at the hospital in silence. Ethan's father was lying pale on the hospital bed. "Dad." Ethan stood half a step behind me, wringing his fingers and calling out softly. "In." Ethan's father responded faintly. Just this single syllable carried a strong sense of oppression. I turned my head to glance at Ethan, whose head was lowered even more. I knew these little gestures were his trademarks when he was nervous and scared. If it were before, I would have surely taken his hand at this moment, comforting him not to be afraid and that I was there for him. But now, I moved my steps and casually sat on the leather sofa, looking directly into the eyes of the head of the Ethan group without fear. "Mr. Ethan's father, what do you want to talk to me about? Let's get straight to the point. I'm sure Miss Emma is aware of the sharp decline in the stock price of the Ethan Group. I invited Miss Emma here today with no other request. I just hope that Miss Emma and my son can get married as soon as possible." After saying this, Ethan's father covered his mouth and kept coughing. Although he was weak, the undeniable tone in his words was very obvious. The nurse beside him stepped forward to pat his back. Ethan wanted to step forward but dared not. His eyes subconsciously turned to me for help. I calmly withdrew my gaze and said lightly, "Is the Maxwell Group giving the Ethan Group a hard time?" The Maxwell Group was the leading company that took a fancy to my ability and was only willing to sign a contract with me. Ethan's father finally stopped coughing. "Miss Emma is a smart person." I smiled. I finally understood completely. The Ethan Group was not as powerful as the Maxwell Group. After offending the Maxwell Group, they had no way to seek peace. Knowing that the Maxwell Group highly appreciated me, they had set their sights on me. From beginning to end, I was just a tool for these superiors, with no human rights at all. What do you think, Miss Emma? I've already ended my son's ridiculous marriage. Now, as long as Miss Emma gives the nod, you can live a happy life with him. Ethan looked at me with great anticipation, his eyes glistening with tears. I looked at him and smiled, saying each word clearly, "Sorry, I never want something that someone else has discarded, a second-hand item." As soon as I finished speaking, Ethan's father angrily threw a water glass at Ethan. "Useless thing. All the troubles are caused by your misdeeds. Don't you have any idea what kind of person you are? How dare you act so arrogantly in front of me?" Ethan's father was making veiled accusations, his eyes constantly glancing at me. Blood immediately gushed from Ethan's forehead, but he still stubbornly looked at me with a face full of tears. Seeing him get hurt, my heart could remain as calm as still water. I didn't say a word, just watched coldly, and then sneered, leaving with a click of my high-heeled shoes. Ethan's father had never been ignored like this by a younger generation. His long-standing sense of superiority was replaced by a sense of frustration at this moment. He angrily jumped up from the bed and started cursing without restraint. For the first time, Ethan defied his father just to catch up with me. He kept choking back sobs and saying, "Emma, there are no obstacles between us anymore. Do you really not want to marry me? If you know that, then get out of my way." Having just been angered by his father, I was full of rage. Hearing this, Ethan shook his head in pain, repeating, "Emma, you would never treat me like this. Is there really no chance for us? I've already divorced her. I've always loved you, but I don't love you anymore. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Emma, you loved me so much before. Have you forgotten?" Ethan was extremely agitated, confronting me hysterically. I pursed my lips and looked at him. "You also know that was just in the past? The person I loved is already dead in my heart." My words were like a thorn, deeply piercing into Ethan's heart. He covered his head in pain, constantly muttering that it wasn't true. My patience had completely run out. I had no mood to listen to his confessions. I pushed him away forcefully and was about to turn around and leave. Ethan fell to the ground, crying and screaming behind me. I frowned tightly and left in big strides. After that day, I cut off contact with Ethan. I didn't deliberately pay attention to the developments of the Ethan Group, but I still saw the latest news about it on TV. In order to appease the enraged Maxwell Group, the Ethan Group paid a high amount of liquidated damages, so it had to lay off a large number of old employees to reduce expenses. For a time, there was widespread discontent within the Maxwell Group, and negative news about the Ethan Group came in like a landslide. If it weren't for the foundation of the Ethan Group, it might have ceased to exist during this crisis. I didn't feel much. It was all Ethan's own doing. Just when I had had enough of lying low and decided to go abroad for further study, the Maxwell Group somehow got my phone number. A senior executive of the Maxwell Group personally called me and extended an olive branch. It would be a lie to say I wasn't tempted, but considering that if I joined the Maxwell Group, I might have to deal with Ethan again someday, I declined the kind offer of the Maxwell Group. I contacted my mentor from college and consulted about information related to going abroad. My mentor was a bit surprised when he learned that I wanted to go abroad for further study. Then he felt pity that I had missed the opportunity to join a big company back then. Finally, he comforted me that it wasn't too late to work hard now. Emma, you're a talented person. Your future achievements will surely be higher than mine. The professor evaluated me like this. I also lived up to my mentor's expectations. I passed the extremely difficult entrance exam on the first try and was admitted to an Ivy League school abroad. My mentor happily contacted all the classmates in my class and planned to hold a grand banquet to treat everyone. It was at this class reunion that Ethan and I met again. When I saw him again, I was stunned for a full minute, not reacting. It was Ethan who spoke first and broke the silence. Emma, long time no see. He walked over, smiling at me, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I pursed my lips and looked at him with downcast eyes, not knowing what to say. Seeing my scrutinizing gaze, he smiled self-deprecatingly. I must look really ugly now. Not really. You just look a bit haggard. I told the truth. Perhaps because of my extremely harsh attitude towards him that last day, when I spoke to him calmly at this moment, his eyes suddenly turned red. Emma? I thought you didn't even want to say a single word to me anymore. He said in a muffled voice, taking a step towards me. I stepped back uncomfortably, slightly frowning. You're overthinking. As long as you keep a distance from me, I don't mind continuing to be an old classmate with you. My evasive action made Ethan freeze in place, and the sadness in his eyes was almost overwhelming. I suddenly felt annoyed. Let's stop reminiscing. Hurry in. The professor is already here. I left this sentence and entered the private room first. Amidst the congratulations from many classmates, I gradually became tipsy. After a few rounds of drinking, the professor excused himself, saying he couldn't hold his liquor and left first. Everyone understood that the professor was giving us young people, who hadn't seen each other for a long time, the space to have a wild celebration. We got together and chatted about all sorts of things. Gradually, the topic turned to me. I answered with a smile. But when everyone mentioned that Ethan and I were the golden couple they recognized, I couldn't help but turn cold. I picked up my glass and toasted Ethan from afar. Ethan is the young master of the Ethan Group. I'm not worthy of him. But I still want to thank him. Ethan is really great. He taught me how to be an independent woman. I drained the glass in one gulp, and then changed the topic. Let's talk about something else. Don't make our school hunk feel uncomfortable. Quite a few people knew we had broken up. Seeing the awkward atmosphere, they all laughed and cooperated with me to change the topic. But some individuals who had a crush on Ethan and didn't know the details kept urging us to play couple games. Seeing that I put down my glass and stopped responding, Ethan came to my rescue. Emma has had a bit too much to drink tonight. Let's not play games for now. Let's just chat casually. Everyone still wouldn't give up. Ethan also came to my side under everyone's urging. Someone pushed him, and he directly trapped me. I reflexively jumped up, but Ethan was quick-witted and put his arm around the back of my neck. He looked at me with a pleading look in his eyes. The classmates cheered on the side, shouting, "Kiss one," and he really leaned in towards my lips. At the critical moment, my patience reached its limit. I broke open his fingers, took a step back, and distanced myself from him. My face was gloomy as I said, "That's enough. Ethan, others might not know the situation between us and are just egging on, but don't you know? Emma?" Ethan bit his lower lip, looking at me pitifully. I ignored him and turned to say to everyone, "Ethan and I broke up a long time ago. The reason is that he got married to another woman behind my back." Amid the shocked looks of everyone, I spoke again, "Sorry, I've had a bit too much to drink." I'll leave now. I couldn't stay in this suffocating space any longer. I pushed the door open and ran away as if fleeing. I never thought Ethan would become so difficult to shake off. I actually began to miss the him who used to look down on everything with arrogance. Ethan, are you done? I stopped and said irritably, chasing after me like this will only make me hate you more. Tears kept streaming down his face as he said softly, Emma, I know you're going abroad, and I know I can't keep you. I just want to take a few more looks at you while I can still see you now. I closed my eyes, swallowed all my emotions, and said relatively calmly, I saw Vivian's moments. Aren't you two back together? You've also been to the places we promised to go to. It's really nice. I wish you all the best. No, it's not like that. Ethan took an excited step towards me. But when he noticed my expression turn cold again, he lowered his eyes and took a step back. I've completely broken up with Vivian. She wasn't sick. She lied to me. It's my fault. It's all my fault. Emma, I really regret it. He was crying silently, his shoulders trembling constantly. If time could go back, I would surely hold him in my arms and comfort him gently. Unfortunately, the past can't be recalled. Ethan, I don't care about all this anymore. Let me go, and let yourself go too. On the day I went abroad, it rained in the city. I dragged my suitcase and walked into the airport. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan again. He was fully dressed up, following me at a certain distance. I let out a soft sigh and walked into the lounge. He sat in the seat behind me, quietly looking at me through his sunglasses. I pretended not to notice, put on my headphones, and quietly waited to board the plane. Before leaving, I received an unexpected call. Mr. Ethan's father? Miss Emma, there's no need to be so surprised. Wouldn't it be more affectionate to call me Ethan's dad? The edge in Mr. Ethan's father's tone was gone compared to some time ago. I glanced at Ethan and then said indifferently, we're not that familiar. It's more polite to call you Mr. Ethan's father. Hearing my answer, Ethan clenched his fists tightly. I saw Ethan's little movement from the corner of my eye, but I didn't react and still said lightly, Mr. Ethan's father, if you have something to say, just say it directly. The other end of the phone suddenly fell silent. Then a sigh from Mr. Ethan's father came through. Miss Emma, if I apologize to you now, would you give Ethan a chance? I was about to speak but was interrupted by Mr. Ethan's father, don't rush to refuse. Listen to me first. You've been with Ethan for so many years. I admit that I didn't think much of you before, but I've never tried to interfere either. Ethan was spoiled since he was a child. I always thought he was just playing around with your relationship. After all, you two are from different social classes. But since he broke up with you, this kid has been in a slump and then his health started to deteriorate. As a father, I really feel it deeply. If anything I did before made you unhappy, I sincerely apologize to you here. I just hope you can give Ethan another chance for the sake of your past relationship. I put the phone on speaker and stood up, facing Ethan. Mr. Ethan's father, Mr. Young Ethan's father, since that's the case, I'll make it clear again today. Ethan and I will have no relationship other than being strangers from now on. On the day I left, Ethan fainted in the airport lounge. When he fell, his sunglasses fell off, revealing his handsome face. All the ladies rushed forward to check on him. Seeing this, I deleted the emergency number on my phone screen and dragged my suitcase away. Even when I was queuing to board the plane, my heart was still uneasy, always afraid that the Ethan father-son duo would pester me again. It was not until I sat in my seat on the plane that my restless heart finally settled down. Looking at the blue sky and white clouds outside the window, I finally felt a bit of relief. After the plane landed, as I breathed in the foreign air, I suddenly had an urge to cry. I sniffed, held back the uneasiness in my heart, and walked towards the senior who came to pick me up with a smile. During my days abroad, I immersed myself in the intense studies, and those distracting thoughts in my heart were completely replaced by the complicated courses. If it hadn't been for the overseas call I received late one night, I would have almost completely forgotten about Ethan. Hello? Is this Miss Emma? Mr. Ethan has just passed away. Before he died, he asked me to contact you no matter what. He asked me to tell you, Emma, in the next life, I will definitely not miss you again. The call ended. I was only in a daze for a moment. After turning off the phone, I fell back into my dream.